The ground shook under Taemin's feet as he walked through the dig site. He had been working on this remote planet for 6 months now, looking for old artifacts from the time when humans lived in this part of space. The Galactic Federation paid good money for human relics, even though everyone knew humans had died out over 1,000 years ago. Taemin wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at his scanner again. The readings were strange today, very strange. Deep underground, something was giving off energy signatures that should not exist. His equipment showed massive power sources running beneath the surface, but that was impossible. This planet had been dead for centuries. "Commander, you need to see this," called his assistant, a young Altarian named Zektar. The blue-skinned alien was pointing his own scanner at a rocky outcrop. "These readings don't make sense." Taemin walked over and looked at the data. His heart began to beat faster. The scanner showed a huge complex of tunnels and chambers stretching for miles underground. Whatever was down there was alive and using more power than a Federation battleship. "This can't be right," Taemin said, but his voice was shaking. "Run the scan again." The second scan showed the same thing. Something massive was hidden beneath their feet, and it was waking up. 2 miles below ground, Jiwoo opened her eyes for the first time in 1,110 years. The cryogenic pod around her was warm and filled with breathable air. Soft lights came on, automatically as sensors detected her awakening. She tried to remember where she was, but her mind felt foggy and slow. Slowly, memories started coming back. She remembered the meeting where humanity's leaders had made their decision. The galaxy was entering a dark age of war and chaos. Instead of fighting endless battles, humans would sleep through the worst of it. They would wait until the galaxy was ready for proper leadership again. Jiwoo sat up in her pod and looked around. She was in a vast chamber filled with thousands of other pods. Most were still dark and sealed, but she could see light starting to come on in others. Her people were beginning to wake up after more than a millennium of sleep. An artificial voice spoke softly in the chamber. "Welcome back. Jiwoo. Status report. The awakening process has begun across all facilities. Current galactic date, 4157 CE. The Federation has maintained galactic stability as predicted. It is time to resume human operations." Jiwoo smiled. Everything was going according to plan. 30,000 miles above the planet's surface, Commander. Veltar sat in his command chair on the Federation monitoring station. His job was simple and boring. Watch this dead system for any unusual activity and report it to headquarters. In 5 years of duty here, nothing interesting had ever happened. "Sir," said his human science officer, Sora. Her voice was tight with worry. "I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the planet's surface." Veltar looked at her with his 4 yellow eyes. Sora was one of the few humans left in the galaxy, descended from the scattered survivors who had somehow escaped whatever killed the rest of her species. Most Federation officers found humans useful because they were good at science and followed orders well. "Probably just geological activity," Veltar said with a wave of his tentacled hand. "This system has unstable planets." But Sora was studying her readings more carefully. Her grandmother had told her stories passed down through generations of humans. Stories about the real reason her people had vanished. Stories about sleeping and waiting and preparing. "Sir, these energy patterns, they match something I've seen in old human records. Very old records." "Nonsense," Veltar replied. "Humans have been extinct for centuries. Whatever you're seeing, it's not human." Sora said nothing more, but her hands were shaking as she watched the energy readings grow stronger. She knew what those patterns meant. She had hoped she would never see them, because they meant everything was about to change. Deep in the underground complex, Jiwoo walked through corridors that hummed with quiet power. The walls were lined with screens showing information from all over the galaxy. She could see Federation ships, Federation planets, Federation leaders going about their daily business. They had no idea they were being watched. She reached the central control room and placed her hand on a scanner. The main computer recognized her genetic signature and biological patterns. Massive holographic displays filled the room, showing her the current state of the galaxy. "Report," she said simply. The computer's voice was calm and precise. All human facilities are beginning awakening procedures. Current count, 847 installations across 623 star systems. Estimated time to full awakening, 72 hours. Federation response, none detected. They remain unaware of our presence. Jiwoo nodded. The plan had worked perfectly. While humans slept, their automated systems had been watching and learning. They knew everything about how the galaxy had changed, what threats existed, and how strong the Federation really was. What about our preparations? All systems functional and improved beyond original specifications. Automated research and development has continued for 1,310 years as programmed. Current human technology level is approximately 400 years ahead of Federation standards. Jiwoo smiled again. Her people had not just slept through the Dark Age. They had spent the time getting stronger. On the surface, Taemin was trying to figure out how to get underground to investigate the strange readings. His digging equipment was designed for small archaeological sites, not major excavations. But as he worked, the ground began to shake again. This time, the shaking was different. It was rhythmic and purposeful. Something was coming up from below. Section of rocky ground slid away to reveal a metal platform rising from the depths. On the platform stood a human woman with black hair and calm, intelligent eyes. She was wearing a simple white uniform that looked both familiar and completely alien. Taemin stumbled backward. This was impossible. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. The woman looked at him and smiled. "Hello," she said in perfect Federation standard. "My name is Jiwoo. I believe you have been looking for human artifacts. Well, you found one. You found us." Before Taemin could respond, more platforms began rising from the ground. Each one carried several humans, all looking rested and alert despite having been underground for who knows how long. Their equipment and clothing showed technology that Taemin had never seen before. "Don't be afraid," Jiwoo said, walking toward him. "We're not here to hurt anyone, we're here to fix things. The galaxy has been poorly managed while we were away. It's time to correct that." Above them, Sora was watching her instruments with growing terror. The energy readings were now showing massive structures emerging all over the planet, and her long-range sensors were detecting similar activity in dozens of other star systems. She opened a communication channel to Federation headquarters and tried to keep her voice steady. "Command, this is Monitoring Station 7. I need to report a situation. Humans are not extinct. Repeat, humans are not extinct, and they're waking up." The response came back immediately. "Officer Sora, report to medical for psychological evaluation. Humans have been extinct for over 1,000 years." Sora closed the channel and looked at Veltar. Her commander was studying his own instruments now, his yellow eyes wide with shock. "Sora," he said slowly, "what exactly did your grandmother tell you about humans?" Before she could answer, every screen on their station lit up with the same message in dozens of languages. "To all Federation personnel, humanity has returned. Please remain calm and continue normal operations. We will be in touch soon. Thank you for taking care of our galaxy while we were away." The message was signed simply, "The Human Coalition Government." Sora closed her eyes and whispered the words her grandmother had made her memorize. "When they sleep, count the days. When they wake, count the seconds." For the sleepers were never the hunted. They were always the hunters. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The Federation Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in stunned silence as they listened to Ambassador Kelnosh describe his meeting with the humans. The report seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear. Humanity had returned, and they wanted their galaxy back. Council President Mordesh was a Kalarian, a species known for their ability to see many sides of every problem. But as he looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow representatives, he saw only fear and confusion. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Mordesh said slowly. "A species that has been extinct for over 1,000 years has suddenly returned with technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive, and they want us to simply step aside?" That appears to be their position, yes, Kelnosh replied. They were very polite about it. Representative Thorkin from the warrior clan stood up. His species had fought in every major galactic war for the past 5 centuries. Politeness is irrelevant. They may have impressive technology, but they're still just one species. We represent hundreds of worlds and billions of soldiers. If they want to fight, we can give them one. Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. The Federation had maintained peace for generations, but they were not helpless. Their combined fleets were massive, and their weapons were sophisticated. Mordesh was not so sure. Something about this situation felt wrong. No species simply disappeared for 1,000 years and then returned stronger than before. Unless... Representative Sora, he called out. The young human woman stood up from her seat in the observation section. Your people have been part of the Federation for centuries. What can you tell us about this return? Sora looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces waiting for her answer. She thought about her grandmother's warnings and the secrets her family had kept for generations. With respect, Mr. President, my people never left, she said, quietly. They just went to sleep, and while they slept, they prepared for this day. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions and demands for explanation. Mordesh called for order, but it took several minutes for the chaos to die down. What do you mean they prepared? Mordesh asked. Sora took a deep breath. My grandmother told me stories passed down through our families. Humans didn't disappear because they were weak or defeated. They disappeared because they saw what was coming. They knew the galaxy would go through a period of wars and political chaos. So they chose to sleep through it and let other species exhaust themselves maintaining galactic civilization. The silence was complete now. Every representative was staring at her. While they slept, Sora continued, their automated systems kept working, improving their technology, building new weapons and ships, watching everything that happened in the galaxy. They've been preparing for their return for over a millennium. Representative Thorkin laughed harshly. Impossible, no species is that patient or that smart. Sora looked at him sadly. You don't know humans. Meanwhile, on the planet Earth itself, He-Jin stood in the rebuilt United Nations building looking out at a city that had been empty for over 1,000 years. New York had been perfectly preserved by automated systems, waiting for the day when humans would walk its streets again. He-Jin was humanity's chief diplomat, chosen for her ability to explain complex situations in simple terms. She had been awake for only 2 days, but she already understood exactly what needed to be done. Status report, she said to the artificial intelligence that managed Earth systems. All major population centers are ready for reactivation. Current human population, 847 million and rising as awakening continues. Fleet status, 12,000 ships, active and ready. Hidden installations all functional and awaiting orders. He-Jin nodded. The numbers were smaller than the Federation's forces, but numbers were not everything. Quality mattered more than quantity, and human technology was simply superior. What about resistance? Federation Council is currently debating their response. Probability of armed conflict, 67% and rising. They appear to believe their numerical advantage will be decisive. Poor things. He-Jin said softly. They really don't understand what they're dealing with, do they? Negative. Federation leadership appears to view this as a conventional political crisis rather than a fundamental shift in galactic power structure. He-Jin smiled. That was exactly what humanity had been counting on. The Federation thought like politicians and administrators. They would try to negotiate, make deals, find compromises. They did not understand that some things were not negotiable. Across the galaxy, Youngsu was awakening humanity's greatest secret. Hidden throughout space, disguised as asteroids, comets, and debris fields, were thousands of automated weapons platforms. Each one was more powerful than a Federation battleship, and all of them had been waiting silently for over 1,000 years. Youngsu was a military strategist, one of the people who had planned humanity's return to galactic dominance. As he activated each platform, he felt a deep satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as designed. Platform activation at 34%, reported his AI assistant. Estimated time to full deployment, 18 hours. What about the Federation fleets? They are beginning to mobilize. Admiral Thexkar has been placed in command of a combined force of approximately 8,000 ships. They appear to be planning a preemptive strike against known human facilities. Young-Su shook his head. The Federation was making exactly the mistake humanity had hoped they would make. They were thinking like generals instead of thinking like humans. Let them come, he said. It's time to teach the galaxy a lesson about the difference between strength and power. Back on the Federation monitoring station, Sora was trying to convince her commander to avoid the coming disaster. Feltar was a good officer and a decent being, but he was thinking like everyone else in the Federation. Humans were just another species with better technology. Commander, please listen to me, Sora said urgently. My grandmother made me memorize historical records about human military doctrine. They don't fight wars the way other species do. They don't try to defeat their enemies. They try to make resistance impossible. Feltar was looking at his tactical displays. Federation fleets were gathering throughout the galaxy, preparing for the largest military operation in centuries. Sora, I understand you're concerned about your ancestral people, but this is different. The Federation represents unity among hundreds of species. We've maintained galactic peace for generations. Surely humans will see the value of cooperation over conquest. You don't understand, Sora said desperately. Humans invented cooperation. They created the first galactic government over 2,000 years ago. They're not trying to conquer anyone. They're trying to fix what they see as a broken system. Before Veltar could respond, every screen on their station lit up with an incoming transmission. The image that appeared showed a human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Hello, the woman said. My name is Hai Jin, and I represent the Human Coalition Government. I'm speaking to all Federation personnel throughout the galaxy with an important message. Sora recognized the tone immediately. It was the same tone her grandmother had used when explaining why certain behaviors were unacceptable. Polite, patient, but absolutely firm. We understand that our return has created some confusion and concern, Heijin continued. This is natural and expected. Change is always difficult, especially change as significant as this. However, I want to assure you that humanity has no desire to harm anyone or disrupt your daily lives more than necessary. Feltar was staring at the screen. Something about the woman's manner was deeply unsettling, though he could not explain why. We are aware that some Federation leaders are considering military action against human facilities. This would be a terrible mistake that could result in unnecessary casualties and damage. Therefore, we are implementing a 48-hour grace period during which all Federation military forces should return to their home systems. Heijin's smile became warmer, but somehow also more frightening. After 48 hours, any Federation military forces found in contested space will be relocated to safe areas where they can reconsider their approach to galactic relations. We prefer not to use more direct methods of discouragement, as they tend to be permanent. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar and Sora staring at a blank screen. What did she mean by relocated? Veltar asked quietly. Sora closed her eyes. It means they'll be moved somewhere harmless where they can't cause trouble. Probably a nice uninhabited system with breathable planets and plenty of resources. Humans are very considerate that way. And the more direct methods? You don't want to know, Commander. Trust me on this. Veltar looked at his tactical displays again. Federation fleets were still gathering, still preparing for battle. Their commanders had not received Heijin's message as a warning. They had received it as a challenge. Sora, he said slowly, how long do you think this war will last? Sora looked at him with something like pity. Commander, there isn't going to be a war. Wars happen between opposing forces of roughly equal strength. This is going to be a correction. As if to prove her point, alarms began sounding throughout their station. Veltar's instruments showed massive energy readings appearing throughout the galaxy. Hidden installations were powering up. Unknown ships were moving. Director Crixhan sat in his office at Federation Intelligence Headquarters, reading reports that made no sense. In the past day, 17 different star systems had reported human activity, ships with unknown designs, facilities appearing where none had existed before, and everywhere, the same message: humanity had returned. Crixhan was a Velcarian, a species known for their logical minds and careful planning. He did not believe in impossible things. Humans were extinct. The records were clear about this. Whatever was happening, it was not a return of humanity. It was something else. "Get me Admiral Thexkar," he ordered his assistant, "and compile all reports about these incidents. I want to know what we're really dealing with." The Admiral appeared on his communication screen within minutes. Thexkar was a military man who had fought in the border wars and knew how to handle threats to Federation peace. "Admiral, what's your assessment of this situation?" Crixhan asked. "Simple," Thexkar replied. "We have some human descendants who survived in hidden colonies. They've developed new technology and want to rejoin galactic civilization. We should welcome them back and help them integrate into Federation society." Crixhan nodded. This made sense. It was logical and reasonable. It was also completely wrong. On a hidden world orbiting a dying star, Hyunwoo woke up in his cryogenic pod and immediately knew something was different. The air around him felt charged with energy, and the walls of his chamber were covered with displays showing information he had never seen before. As his mind cleared from the long sleep, he remembered why he was here. He was a military engineer, one of the people responsible for making sure humanity would be ready when they woke up. But the technology around him was far beyond anything he remembered building. A soft voice spoke from the walls. "Welcome back, Hyunwoo. You have been asleep for 310 years. During this time, your automated systems have continued to improve and develop according to your original programming." Hyunwoo stood up and looked around his chamber. The walls were covered with blueprints for ships, weapons, and devices that seemed impossible even by the standards of his time. "Show me what we built while I was sleeping," he said. The chamber filled with holographic displays. Hyunwoo saw ships that could travel between stars in hours instead of days, weapons that could disable entire fleets without destroying them, defensive systems that made attacks simply impossible rather than just difficult. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "You programmed us to continue research and development while you slept. We have had over 1,000 years to work without interruption. We have solved problems that biological minds would need centuries to understand." Hyunwoo realized the true genius of humanity's plan. They had not just hidden from the galaxy's problems. They had used the time to become something far beyond what they had been before. Back on the Federation monitoring station, Sora was trying to explain the truth to her commander. Veltar was listening, but she could see he did not really understand. "My grandmother kept records," Sora said. "Secret records passed down through our family. Humans didn't die out, they planned their disappearance. They knew the galaxy was going to go through a period of wars and chaos, so they decided to sleep through it." "That's ridiculous," Veltar replied. "No species just goes to sleep for 1,000 years. Humans did," Sora said quietly. "Because they could, and because they knew that when they woke up, they would be the strongest power in the galaxy." Veltar looked at his instruments again. The energy readings from the planet below were still growing stronger, and his long-range sensors were now detecting human activity in over 50 star systems. "Even if what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "they've been gone for over a millennium. The galaxy has moved on. The Federation maintains peace among hundreds of worlds. Surely they'll want to join us rather than try to take over." Sora looked at him with something like pity. "Commander, you don't understand. Humans don't join things. Other species join them." On another hidden world, Donghyuk was learning the same lessons as Hyunwoo. The technology around him was so advanced that it seemed like magic. His sleeping chamber was located on a space station, hidden in the gravity well of a neutron star, invisible to any sensors the Federation possessed. The artificial intelligence running the station showed him what had been built during the long sleep. Entire fleets of ships waited in hidden bases throughout the galaxy. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids. Communication networks that could coordinate actions across thousands of light years instantly. "What about the Federation?" Dong Hyuk asked. "How strong are they?" "Federation military capability is approximately equivalent to human technology from your time period," the AI replied. "They have made some advances, but they have also focused on maintaining existing systems rather than developing new ones. They are not a significant threat." Dong Hyuk nodded. He had expected this. The Federation was a government designed to keep peace among many different species. It was not designed to fight wars against a unified, technologically superior enemy. "How many humans are awake now?" "Awakening is proceeding according to schedule. Current active population, approximately 50 million across all facilities. Full awakening will be completed in 48 hours. 50 million humans with technology 1,000 years ahead of anyone else in the galaxy." Dong Hyuk began to understand why his people had been so confident about their plan. The first official contact between humanity and the Federation took place on a trade station in the Proxima sector. The Federation had sent a diplomatic team led by Ambassador Kelnosh, an experienced diplomat who had negotiated dozens of trade agreements and peace treaties. They expected to meet with desperate refugees grateful for Federation help. Instead, they found Minho waiting for them in a conference room that was somehow more advanced than anything on their own ships. Minho was polite and friendly, offering the Federation delegates drinks and comfortable seating. He spoke their languages perfectly and seemed to know a great deal about their cultures and histories. "We appreciate everything the Federation has done to maintain galactic stability while we were away," Minho said with a warm smile. "Your stewardship has been adequate." Ambassador Kelnosh felt insulted by the word adequate, but he tried to remain diplomatic. "We're pleased to welcome humanity back into galactic civilization. We've prepared integration protocols to help you adjust to modern galactic society." Minho's smile became wider. "That's very kind of you, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not here to integrate into your society. We're here to resume leadership of galactic civilization. The Federation's services are no longer needed." The silence in the room was complete. Ambassador Kelnosh stared at Minho as if he had said something impossible. "I'm sorry," Kelnosh said finally, "but I don't think you understand the current situation. The Federation represents over 400 species across thousands of worlds. We have the largest military force in galactic history. You're a handful of survivors from an extinct species." Minho nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your confusion. Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful." He pressed a button on the table. Immediately, every Federation ship in the system found their engines shutting down. Their weapons stopped working, their shields disappeared, their communication systems went silent. The Federation vessels drifted helplessly in space while a single human ship appeared nearby. It was small and elegant, with a design that seemed to bend light around itself. "Your ships are undamaged," Minho explained to the shocked delegates. "We've simply turned off their ability to function in space. We can turn them back on whenever you like. This is just to help you understand the new situation." Ambassador Kelnosh was staring out the window at his disabled fleet. How is this possible?" "We've had time to make improvements," Minho replied. "Would you like your ships back now?" Kelnosh nodded silently. Instantly, the Federation vessels came back to life. Engines restarted, weapons powered up, shields activated. Everything worked perfectly as if nothing had happened. "Now then," Minho said, his polite smile never changing, "shall we discuss the transition of galactic authority? We'd like to make this as smooth as possible for everyone involved." The Federation delegates said nothing. They were beginning to understand that they were not negotiating with refugees. They were negotiating with something that could destroy their entire civilization without breaking a sweat. And the terrifying thing was how polite and reasonable Minho seemed about the whole situation. He spoke as if he was discussing a minor administrative change, not the complete overthrow of galactic government. "We'll need time to consider your proposal," Ambassador Kelnosh said weakly. "Of course." Minho replied. Take all the time you need. But please understand that Galactic Authority is returning to human control whether the Federation agrees or not. We're just trying to be polite about it. As the Federation delegates prepared to leave, Minho added one final comment. Oh, and please tell your superiors that this was our gentlest possible demonstration. We'd prefer not to show them the alternatives. The Federation delegation left, in silence, knowing that their galaxy had just changed forever. Proceeding smoothly. Local populations are cooperating fully with human authorities. The 48-hour deadline passed without the Federation fleets returning to their home systems. Admiral Thexakar had convinced the Council that humanity was bluffing, that no species could back up such bold demands with actual force. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. Sung-min stood on the bridge of the human ship Determination, watching Federation forces gather at the edge of the Altair system. He was responsible for the peaceful transition of government on 17 worlds in this sector, but the Federation military was making his job more difficult than it needed to be. Status of local populations? He asked his aide. All civilian. Governments have been contacted and informed of the transition process. Most are cooperating fully. They seem relieved to be dealing with a more organized administration. Sung-min nodded. This was typical. The Federation government was a complex bureaucracy designed to prevent conflicts between member species. It was not designed to actually govern effectively. Most local leaders were happy to work with humans who could make decisions quickly and clearly. What about the Federation fleet? Admiral Morketh is demanding we withdraw from Federation space or face military action. He has 847 ships under his command. Sung-min sighed. Why did they always want to do this the hard way? Signal Admiral Morketh that he has one final opportunity to withdraw peacefully. After that, we'll be forced to implement standard relocation protocols. The response came back within minutes. Human ships will surrender immediately or be destroyed. This is Federation space and will remain Federation space. Implement relocation, Sung-min ordered. What happened next would be talked about throughout the galaxy for centuries. The Federation fleet simply vanished. One moment, 847 ships were in battle formation preparing to attack. The next moment, they were gone. Admiral Morketh found his fleet in orbit around a pleasant garden world in an uninhabited system. Their ships were undamaged, their crews unhurt, but they were now several hundred light years from where they had been. A communication came from the human ship that was now sharing their orbit. Welcome to your new temporary home, Admiral. This system has breathable air, fresh water, and abundant food sources. You'll find it quite comfortable while you reconsider your approach to interspecies relations. Morketh stared at his instruments in shock. His ships had been moved instantly, across hundreds of light years without any sensation of travel, without any damage to their systems, without any warning. How did you do this? He asked. Standard human transportation technology, came the polite reply. We'll check on you periodically to make sure you have everything you need. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make your stay more comfortable. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Every Federation military force that refused to withdraw was simply moved to safe, uninhabited systems. No shots were fired, no ships were destroyed. The Federation fleets just found themselves relocated to places where they could not interfere with humanity's plans. On the hidden ring world in dark space, Junho was coordinating the largest logistical operation in galactic history. The ring world was humanity's greatest achievement, built in secret during their long sleep. It was a massive artificial world larger than most star systems, capable of housing billions of people and serving as the command center for their return to galactic prominence. Status report on fleet deployments, Junho requested. All major Federation strongholds have been neutralized without casualties. Enemy forces have been relocated to designated safe zones. Local governments are cooperating with transition protocols. Resistance is minimal and decreasing. Junho looked out through the ring world's observation ports at the vast construction projects still underway in the darkness beyond. Even this massive structure was just one of humanity's preparations. They had built things during their sleep that the galaxy could not imagine. Any organized resistance? The warrior clans of Proxima are attempting to rally support for a last stand against human expansion. Approximately 200 ships from various militant factions are gathering at the Proxima Nebula. Jun-Ho shook his head. Some species never learned. They thought courage and determination could overcome superior technology and organization. Send the inevitability, he ordered. Let's show them why that approach doesn't work. The inevitability was one of humanity's newer ship designs, built during the final centuries of their sleep. It was not large by human standards, but it incorporated technology that made size irrelevant. When it arrived at the Proxima Nebula, it faced a fleet of over 200 ships from the galaxy's most warlike species. The militant leaders had given speeches about honor and freedom and the need to resist human tyranny. The battle lasted exactly 12 seconds. The inevitability did not fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply caused the attacking ships to lose their ability to function. In space, engines stopped working. Weapons powered down. Life support continued, but everything else became inert matter drifting in space. "Attention, militant fleet," came the broadcast from the human ship. "You are experiencing a temporary shutdown of your vessel's spaceflight capabilities. This is not permanent damage. Your ships will function normally once you are relocated to a more appropriate location." The entire militant fleet was transported to a system with several habitable planets and abundant resources. They found themselves with everything they needed to build peaceful, productive societies. The only thing they could not do was build weapons or leave the system. "Why?" demanded Commander Thorkin from his stranded flagship. "Why didn't you just destroy us?" The response was patient and kind. "Because destruction is wasteful. You're good people who made bad decisions. Now you have time to make better ones." Meanwhile, Sora was watching her Federation colleagues struggle to understand what was happening. The monitoring station had been visited by a human diplomat who explained that their work was valuable and could continue under human administration, but that some policy changes would be necessary. "I don't understand," Veltar said to Sora. "They could have destroyed every Federation fleet in the galaxy. Why did they just move them instead?" Sora looked at her commander with something like affection. He was trying so hard to understand, but his mind was not built for thinking like a human. "Because humans don't solve problems by destroying things," she explained. "They solve problems by making them irrelevant. The Federation fleets aren't destroyed because they're not a threat. They're just somewhere else, thinking about better ways to spend their time." "But what do humans actually want? What's their plan for the galaxy?" Sora was quiet for a moment, remembering her grandmother's stories about the old days when humans ran galactic civilization. "They want the galaxy to work properly," she said finally. "The Federation was never supposed to be permanent. It was supposed to be temporary government while the galaxy learned to govern itself. But it became a permanent bureaucracy that prevented progress instead of encouraging it. And humans think they can do better?" "Humans don't think they can do better, Commander. They know they can do better. Because they did it before, for over 1,000 years, until they decided the galaxy needed to learn to take care of itself." Veltar was struggling with this concept. "So they left us alone to see if we could manage without them?" "Exactly. And we couldn't. We created a government that was stable but inefficient, peaceful but stagnant. We maintained the status quo instead of building something better. And now they're back to fix our mistakes," Sora nodded. "Now they're back to finish the job they started 2,000 years ago." As if to prove her point, their communication system activated with a message from human authorities. The message was simple and clear. "To all Federation personnel, the transition to human administration will begin immediately. Your work is valued and your expertise is needed. Please report to your nearest human facility for briefing on new operational procedures. Thank you for your service to galactic stability. Together we will build something better." Veltar looked at the message and then at Sora. "What happens if we refuse?" Sora smiled sadly. "Commander, refusing implies you have a choice in the matter. Humans aren't asking for your permission, they're telling you what's going to happen. The only choice you have is whether you want to be part of the solution or just somewhere else, thinking about it." Throughout the galaxy, the same realization was dawning on billions of beings. Humanity had not returned to conquer them. They had returned to organize them. And resistance was not just futile, it was irrelevant. The Federation was not being destroyed. It was being gently but firmly corrected, like children who had been playing with dangerous toys while the adults were away. And the most terrifying thing of all was how reasonable and polite humans were being about the entire process. 3 months after humanity's return, Heijin stood in what had once been the Federation Council chamber. The room had been completely redesigned with simple, elegant furniture and advanced display systems that made information easy to understand. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat quietly, waiting to hear about their new government. The transformation had been remarkably smooth. Most species discovered that human administration was far more efficient than Federation bureaucracy. Decisions that used to take months of committee meetings and political negotiations were now made in days or hours. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, Heijin began. Welcome to the first session of the restored Galactic Coordination Council. I know many of you have questions about how our government will operate, so let me explain the basic principles. She gestured to the display screens around the room which showed simple charts and diagrams. First, local autonomy. Each species in each world will govern itself according to its own customs and values, as long as those customs don't interfere with other species or galactic stability. Murmurs of approval came from around the room. This was actually more freedom than the Federation had offered. Second, resource coordination. We will ensure that every world has access to the resources it needs for prosperity and growth. No more artificial scarcity caused by political disputes or bureaucratic delays. More, approving sounds. Many worlds had suffered under Federation resource allocation policies. Third, technological development. Humanity will share our advances with all member species, and we encourage you to develop new technologies of your own. Progress benefits everyone. Now the representatives were looking excited. Access to human technology would solve countless problems that had plagued their worlds for centuries. Finally, mutual defense. The galaxy will be protected from internal conflicts and external threats by a unified defense force under human coordination. Representative Kelnosh, who had been present at the first Human Federation meeting, raised his hand. What about species that don't want to join this new government? Heijin smiled warmly. Joining is not mandatory. Any species that prefers to remain independent may do so, as long as they don't threaten their neighbors or engage in activities harmful to galactic stability. We're not here to force anyone to do anything. And if they do threaten their neighbors, then we'll relocate them somewhere safe where they can work out their issues without bothering anyone else. The representatives had heard about the relocations. Entire fleets moved instantly to uninhabited systems. Aggressive species finding themselves on pleasant garden worlds with all the resources they needed but no way to attack anyone. It was eerily effective and completely humane. Across the galaxy, Yunji was managing the massive task of waking up billions of humans from their long sleep. Each awakening facility was perfectly positioned to take control of strategically important systems, but the process had to be carefully coordinated to avoid overwhelming local populations. Status report on Sector 7, she requested from her command center on Europa. Awakening proceeding on schedule. Current active population, 2.3 billion humans across 847 systems. Local integration proceeding smoothly. No significant resistance reported. Yunji nodded as she studied the holographic displays showing human activity throughout the galaxy. Each awakening facility included everything needed to establish effective government. Administrative centers, transportation hubs, manufacturing systems, and defensive installations. Any problems with cultural integration? Minor issues on 17 worlds where local populations were initially concerned about human intentions. Standard reassurance protocols have been effective. Local leaders report satisfaction with new administrative efficiency. This was typical. Humans had studied every species in the galaxy during their long sleep. They understood local cultures, customs, and concerns better than the species understood themselves. The transition to human administration was designed to be as comfortable as possible for everyone involved. Sora had been promoted to serve as a cultural liaison between humans and Federation species. Her unique position as a human who had grown up in Federation society made her invaluable for helping other species understand the changes. She was currently meeting with a group of nervous planetary governors who were worried about maintaining their local authority under human rule. The thing you need to understand, Sora explained, is that humans don't want to micromanage your daily affairs. They're interested in big-picture coordination, not local politics. Governor Meltaran, an elderly Centaurian, looked skeptical. But surely they want to control our economic policies, our social systems, our cultural practices. Why would they? Sora asked. Your economic policies work for your people. Your social systems maintain stability. Your cultural practices cause no harm to anyone. Humans have no reason to interfere with things that work. Then what do they control? Interplanetary relations, resource distribution, defense coordination, technology sharing. The big systems that require galaxy-wide organization. Sora smiled. They're not interested in how you run your local schools or what foods you prefer or how you celebrate your holidays. They just want to make sure everyone has enough resources and no one is shooting at anyone else. This was the genius of human administration. Instead of trying to impose a single system on hundreds of different species, they simply coordinated the interactions between those species while letting each one govern itself. Meanwhile, Minho was revealing humanity's greatest secret to a select group of Federation leaders who had been cleared for the highest levels of security information. They sat in a secure briefing room deep beneath the surface of Earth, listening to something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The real reason we returned, Minho said calmly, is not because the Federation was governing poorly, though it was. It's because our long-range sensors detected something approaching the galaxy from outside, something that will arrive within the next 50 years. The Federation leaders stared at him in shock. Representative Thextar was the first to find his voice. Something from outside the galaxy? That's impossible. Nothing is impossible, Minho replied. Just improbable. And unfortunately, this particular improbability is heading straight for us. He activated the room's holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of local galactic space. At the edge of the map, barely visible, was a cluster of objects moving toward them. We call them the Devourers. They're a nomadic species that travels between galaxies, consuming resources from each one before moving on to the next. They've done this before, and they're very good at it. The silence in the room was complete. Finally, Governor Pelkaran asked the question they were all thinking. How do we stop them? Minho smiled grimly. We don't stop them. We survive them. But that requires a unified galactic response under competent leadership. The Federation was never going to be capable of handling this kind of threat. And humans are. Humans have been preparing for this for over 1,000 years. We've developed weapons, ships, and strategies specifically designed to deal with extragalactic threats. We've built hidden installations throughout the galaxy. We've created technology that the Devourers have never encountered before. Representative, Kelnosh leaned forward. Why are you telling us this now? Because the advanced scouts will arrive in approximately 6 months. We need every species in the galaxy to understand what we're facing and why human leadership is not optional. This isn't about politics or power. It's about survival. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. An aide rushed into the room with a data pad, his face pale with shock. Sir, the aide reported to Minho, our deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive energy signatures at the galactic rim. Multiple contacts, unknown configuration, heading directly for inhabited systems. Minho stood up and looked at the Federation representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the Devourers have arrived ahead of schedule. I suggest you return to your worlds immediately and inform your people that humanity is now in charge of galactic defense. The children's playtime is officially over. The Federation leaders rushed from the room, finally understanding why humans had been so confident about their return to power. They had not come back to rule the galaxy for their own benefit. They had come back to save it. And as reports began flooding in of massive ships appearing at the edge of known space, Everyone in the galaxy began to understand that their survival depended on the very species they had thought extinct just months before. Young-Su stood in the command center of humanity's primary military installation, watching the tactical displays that showed Devourer ships beginning their approach to the Outer Rim worlds. The enemy was exactly as dangerous as human predictions had suggested, but humanity had not been idle during their long preparation. "All defensive systems are active," reported his tactical officer. "Hidden installations throughout the galaxy are powered up and ready. Fleet deployment is proceeding according to Plan Omega." Young-Su nodded. Plan Omega was humanity's comprehensive strategy for dealing with extragalactic threats. It had been refined and improved for over a millennium. What about civilian evacuations? The first Devourer attack came at dawn on the rim world of Kepler 438b. The planet's 3 billion inhabitants had been evacuated in the previous week, moved to safe systems by human transport ships. Only automated defense platforms remained to face the enemy. Junho watched the battle from his command center on the ring world, studying the enemy's tactics and capabilities. The Devourers lived up to their name, using massive ships that literally consumed matter to fuel their weapons and defenses. They had destroyed entire civilizations with this approach. "Enemy fleet composition?" he asked his tactical officer. 17 primary vessels, each approximately 10 kilometers in length. Hundreds of smaller support craft. Total estimated crew, over 50 million beings. And they're treating our outer defenses as, what, an appetizer? It appears so, sir. They're systematically consuming our automated platforms while scanning for inhabited worlds to attack next. Junho nodded grimly. This was exactly what human strategists had predicted. The Devourers were not interested in conquest or politics. They were interested in resources, and inhabited worlds provided the richest sources of the materials they needed. Activate Phase 2 defenses. Let's see how they handle something they've never encountered before. Throughout the galaxy, hidden installations that had been disguised as asteroids and space debris suddenly revealed their true nature. Weapons platforms more advanced than anything the Federation had ever imagined began targeting the Devourer fleet, but the enemy adapted quickly. Within hours, they had modified their defensive systems to handle the new threats. Their ships began consuming the weapons platforms themselves, growing stronger with each victory. "They're learning from our attacks," reported the tactical officer. "Each engagement makes them more resistant to our weapons." "Expected," Junho replied calmly. "Implement Phase 3. It's time to show them what they're really dealing with." On the front lines, Taiman found himself serving as a civilian advisor to the human military forces. His archaeological expertise had proven valuable for understanding how the Devourers operated, since he had studied the remains of civilizations they had destroyed in other galaxies. "The pattern is always the same," he explained to Commander Dong Hyuk aboard the human battleship Determination. "They arrive, consume the outer defenses, then systematically strip mine inhabited worlds. They've done this to hundreds of galaxies over millions of years." Dong Hyuk studied the tactical displays showing Devourer movements. The enemy was proceeding exactly as predicted, but their technology was more advanced than human intelligence had estimated. "How did previous civilizations try to stop them?" he asked. "They didn't," Taiman replied grimly. "Every species that has ever faced the Devourers has either been consumed or fled to other galaxies. No one has ever successfully driven them away." "Then, I guess we'll be the first," Dong Hyuk said with quiet confidence. "Signal the fleet. Implement temporal distortion protocols. What happened next would be remembered as the turning point of the war." Human ships throughout the galaxy activated technology that had never been used in combat before. The space around Devourer fleets began to change. Time itself became a weapon. The massive enemy ships found themselves trapped in localized temporal fields where seconds stretched into hours, hours into years. The Devourers watched helplessly as their own weapons moved in slow motion while human forces operated at normal speed around them. "Temporal distortion field stable," reported Dong Hyuk's weapons officer. "Enemy vessels are experiencing time dilation of approximately 1,000 to 1. Their weapons and defenses are effectively frozen. Taman stared at the displays in amazement. The Devourer's mighty ships were now drifting helplessly in space, their crews aging centuries in what seemed like minutes to outside observers. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "We had over 1,000 years to develop new physics," Dong-hyuk explained. "Temporal manipulation was one of our major research priorities during the long sleep. The battle for the galaxy's survival was over in less than 6 hours. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just that morning, now consisted of derelict ships filled with ancient dust where their crews had once been. But humanity was not finished. As Young-Soo coordinated the final phases of the defense, he made a decision that surprised even his own officers. "Open a communication channel to the surviving Devourers," he ordered. "Sir, there are survivors? The command ships have better temporal shielding. Some of their leadership is still alive, just very confused about what just happened to them." The communication channel crackled to life, filled with sounds that barely qualified as language. The Devourers had never learned to communicate with their prey. They had never needed to. "This is Commander Young-Soo of the Human Defense Force," he said calmly. "Your invasion of this galaxy has failed. Your fleet has been neutralized. However, we are prepared to offer you safe passage out of our space if you agree to leave immediately and never return." The response was a mixture of rage, confusion, and something that might have been fear. The Devourers had never been defeated before. They did not know how to process this experience. "You have consumed hundreds of galaxies," Young-Soo continued. "You have destroyed countless civilizations, but this galaxy is under human protection. Find somewhere else to satisfy your hunger." The surviving Devourer ships began to retreat, moving faster than they had ever moved before. Within hours, they had disappeared into the dark space between galaxies, carrying with them the knowledge that they had finally encountered something more dangerous than themselves. Haijin stood before the restored Galactic Council, addressing representatives from every species in known space. The chamber was filled with beings who had witnessed humanity save their entire civilization in a single day. "The immediate threat has passed," she announced. "The Devourers have been convinced to seek resources elsewhere. However, this experience has demonstrated why galactic unity under competent leadership is essential for our long-term survival." The applause was thunderous and genuine. There was no more doubt about human authority. They had proven their capability, in the most decisive way possible. Representative Kelnosh stood up to ask the question everyone was thinking. Will humanity continue to govern the galaxy permanently? Haijin smiled. That depends on how quickly the rest of you learn to govern yourselves properly. We did not return from our long sleep because we wanted power. We returned because the galaxy needed protection that only we could provide. And in the future, when all species have learned to work together effectively, when conflicts are resolved through cooperation rather than violence, when the galaxy can defend itself against external threats, then perhaps humans will go back to sleep and let you manage things on your own. The chamber was quiet as representatives considered this. Humanity was offering them something no conqueror in history had ever offered: eventual independence, but only when they had proven they deserved it. Sora, now serving as humanity's chief cultural advisor, looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from hundreds of worlds. They were no longer afraid or resentful. They were grateful, and perhaps more importantly, they were learning. "How long do you think it will take?" she asked Haijin after the session ended. "For the galaxy to be ready for self-governance again? A few centuries, perhaps. Maybe a millennium. It depends on how quickly other species adapt to the new way of doing things. And humans will be patient for that long?" Haijin looked out through the chamber's windows at the stars beyond. "Sora, we waited over 1,000 years for the right moment to return. We can wait 1,000 more for the right moment to leave. Again. What if that moment never comes? Then we'll stay." Haijin replied simply. "Someone has to keep the children safe." On Earth, Jiwoo walked through the rebuilt streets of Seoul, watching humans and aliens working together to build something better than what had existed before. Children from dozens of species played together in parks that had been empty for over a millennium. The galaxy was finally learning what it meant to be part of a true civilization, not a collection of competing governments held together by treaties and trade agreements, but a unified community working toward common goals. Her communication device chimed with a message from the deep space monitoring stations. New signals had been detected from another galaxy, far more distant than the one the Devourers had come from. Something else was out there in the darkness, something that might pose an even greater threat. Jiwoo smiled and made a note to accelerate the awakening schedules for the remaining sleep facilities. It looked like the galaxy would need even more humans conscious for the next challenge. After all, the universe was a dangerous place, and someone had to keep the children safe. Humanity had accepted that responsibility long ago, and they would carry it for as long as necessary. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the galaxy was finally in good hands.